Hello students, welcome back to Chemistry with Sumana ma'am. I am currently doing the chapter Periodic Classification of Elements from Science textbook CBSE class 10, and already I have discussed about what is classification, why it is essential, Lavoisier's classification, Dobrynin's law of triads, followed by Newland's law of octaves. You have learnt about their attempts and why these were not so famous among the scientists. The next attempt was made by another famous scientist, Mendeleev. Mendeleev's periodic classification of elements. His periodic classification is based on the law called the periodic law. The word periodicity means repetition at regular intervals. During his time, 63 elements were known. So one of the best classification which was given to the world was by Mendeleev, and all the elements known during his time had a place in his classification. So let me explain what was the basis of classification and how he did the classification. Mendeleev's periodic law. Based on his studies, what he observed was the chemical and the physical properties of elements depended on the atomic mass of the elements. So according to his law, that is Mendeleev's periodic law, the physical and chemical properties of elements are periodic functions of their atomic masses. What does that mean, periodic functions? Periodic means repetition at regular interval. Function means depends. What does that statement mean then? The properties of elements, that is the physical and chemical properties, repeats at regular intervals and it depends on the atomic mass of the element. So the statement is clear to you. Now I will move how he did the classification of elements. So what forms the basis? See what he did. He found the relationship between the atomic mass and the physical and the chemical properties of elements. Next, what he did was properties of compounds formed by elements with hydrogen and oxygen. He studied basically two things, that is hydrides and oxides of the elements, their formulae. All this he accumulated, or he listed out all the properties of elements based on his studies of hydrides and oxides of the elements known during his time. Now let me explain how his explanation or how he started his classification. The first step that he did was, after studying the properties, he took 63 cards and listed the properties of the elements, one card for one element. After that, he went on arranging the cards in increasing order of the atomic masses of the elements. While doing so, he kept one thing in mind. Elements which were having similar properties were placed one below the other. So you can visualize what he would have got after the arrangement would be a table consisting of many vertical columns and horizontal rows. He called those vertical columns as groups and horizontal rows called periods. Then what he did was, he found in his classification there were 8 groups and 6 periods. The format of the periodic table developed by Mendeleev is given here. You can see that these are the groups 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 groups are there and 6 periods are there in his classification. You can also observe that he studied the properties of the oxides and the hydrides while classifying the elements. And then All the elements had a place in his classification. This was one of the greatest achievements during his classification. What else he did was, he had left gaps for some elements. You can see here some of the gaps left in his classification, which was a major advantage of Mendeleev's classification. Then he also did one more thing. Actually, cobalt should come after nickel and tellurium should come after iodine. So he had to alter the positions of some of the elements in his classification. That was done in order to match the properties of the elements. So he boldly took that step. That was also an achievement of Mendeleev's classification. And the other advantage was, he left some gaps for the elements that were not discovered during his time. The other details about the achievements of Mendeleev's classification and demerits of his classification will be dealt in the next session. Today you learnt about Mendeleev's classification of elements, which was based on Mendeleev's periodic law, which states that properties of elements are periodic functions of their atomic masses. And in his classification, the periodic table consisted of 8 groups and 6 periods, and all the 63 elements had a place in his classification. Hope that you have understood about Mendeleev's classification of elements. Do not forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Thank you.